thumbs up or, yes, everything's good, so our moderator can check. Wait a few more minutes. Everything good to go? Carrie, everything sounds good? Good? Good morning, everyone. Oh, actually, good afternoon, everyone. It's June 25th. I can't believe summer's here. And thank you very much for joining us today. We have some great presenters, local experts, but friends of Volunteer BC on this webinar, Transitioning to Virtual Volunteer Engagement. So you are at the right webinar this afternoon. We know many things have changed since the way we do our jobs, since the beginning of the year, and we're all learning. And like today, I was just sharing with my panelists is that I'm just learning how to use Zoom. I've been so familiar with other ways of doing my work, and now I'm just learning how to use Zoom and how to engage with our stakeholders and our partners and volunteers. So this webinar is very timely because a lot of us are moving on to this, or we've always done forms of virtual volunteer engagement, but now we're being pushed to do this. So I'd like to introduce several of our panelists today. And Lisa Putland, is Executive Director of Volunteer Victoria. She'll talk about some of the work they are doing at Volunteer Victoria. Oscar Cruz, who's the Manager of Support Volunteering at Volunteer Burnaby, and also one of our Volunteer BC board members. I have Diamond Inzinger, that's it, Inzinger. I'm so sorry, Diamond, who's the Provincial Commissioner of Girl Guides of Canada, and I just had the pleasure of meeting her just a month ago about some of the virtual volunteering roles that they are doing there. And Carrie Moore, who is a manager of Volunteer Fraser Valley and one of our Volunteer BC board members. So before we begin, this is pretty standard stuff, but the housekeeping, all of you are on mute, except the speakers. If you have a question, put it in the chat. After each presentation, we'll give everyone an opportunity to ask questions. But at the very end, Carrie Moore will facilitate, idea sharing. We could put in the chat box of some of the questions you may have or idea sharing about virtual volunteer engagement. And my goal after this presentation, we'll record the session so you can all use it as a resource, but also put together an actual resource. How that will look, I don't know, but maybe it's a spreadsheet of different roles or ideas, but something that we can all use at the end of this, because that's very important these days, is the idea sharing. Rather than duplicating what's out there, why not just look at best case practices? So I would like to present and have Lisa from Volunteer Victoria present her presentation. So thank you, everyone.
Hello, thank you so much for the invitation to be here. Before we get going, I would just like to acknowledge that we are gathered on traditional territory. And here in Victoria, we are on the Lekwungen speaking territory. So to the Esquimalt, Songhees and Wasanich Nation, we offer our respect and thanks. I think for most of us, this time since COVID-19 has been a time to offer our respect and thanks to the traditional territories, but also if there is anywhere in the world that we could have gathered, British Columbia is an astonishing space. So more than ever, we offer our thanks. And thanks to each of you for participating and for really being at the heart and center of volunteer management at this time. There is such a wealth and abundance of knowledge and skill in this webinar. So thank you for participating and contributing and sharing your ideas. And of course, a huge thanks to Volunteer BC for connecting us all. It looks always easy to put 90 people into one meeting, Laura Lynn. We know it is not as simple as it looks. So thank you, thank you. We are just going to talk talk a little bit about what's happened since COVID-19. And as you all know, on your own life journeys through COVID-19, volunteerism has changed. The rules of COVID-19 are exacting on volunteers. We must follow every health guidance from the excellent folks at BC Health and the Public Health Agency of Canada. But what hasn't changed is the abundance of goodness and the willingness of people to step forward. So since the end of March, more than 9,000 volunteers have stepped up to volunteer through BC 211. And more than 50,000 volunteers registered to help with the national COVID-19 volunteer recruitment campaign. We saw literally thousands of people jumping at the opportunity to volunteer and to be called into service. And for some of us, that was a magical opportunity to engage in first-time volunteers and volunteers who are changing their systems. And for others, it meant a really huge onslaught of volunteers. There has been no single answer that we have found so far, but as is true, there isn't a shortage of good people wanting to do good things. What we have seen and what we have experienced in Victoria since March, we've been helping the folks at BC 211. We created our own COVID-19 fast response system. And so we've met with a couple of thousand volunteers since March. About 1,000 of them we've met virtually. Through interviews, and what we've seen so far from volunteers is that there is a huge demand for volunteers who were previously very engaged in volunteerism, and they're looking for alternatives to their previous roles. So we know that because of COVID-19, there were 3 types of people that were seeking shelter: older volunteers and those who were medically fragile, who are being served by existing volunteer programs. And then there is a massive group of volunteers who are in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, who have stopped volunteering in their current positions and are looking for new alternatives. But they're also looking for alternatives to socialize and learn safely from a distance. So their particular interest is to work with people still. It's to have meaningful engagement, and their interest isn't particularly in learning new tools and new programs. And what we've heard time and time again, in the simplest of terms, is I just want to help. And so there has been a huge demand for on-demand opportunities. I want to help now. I want to help today. It is the resurgence of all of our jobs in educating volunteers that you can't always do what you want immediately, which is a little heart-wrenching, to have to go back to the beginning of saying we do actually have to assess volunteers' needs and interests. But in this time over the last 12 weeks, we've also learned that trust matters. An organization that can demonstrate both care and competency is doing better than those organizations that are not clear and have mixed messaging. So one of the things we learned, for example, is that no contact and low contact volunteering, and I get that as a professional, virtual volunteering to us means that it is through an electronic means traditionally, but what we've seen are volunteers stepping forward who consider no contact volunteering to be something quite traditional, and they consider low contact volunteering to be something immediate. And I do think that we've got some mixed messaging. I have been talking to volunteers for weeks and months now and letting them know that volunteering on a board, volunteering in community planning, all of those traditional volunteer roles, they can all be done safely from a distance with good communication and interaction. But we have had to think very seriously as a community of professionals about what no contact and low contact means and how we share the same definitions. So, for example, we've had thousands of volunteers step forward to help people during COVID-19. The vast majority, I would say, want no contact volunteering. They want to know that they're safe. And we can make sweeping statements about who they are right now, that they are folks who, because of age or because of medical vulnerability or underlying health conditions, need to stay fairly well sheltered at home. But we're also seeing people who are generally quite afraid to go out in public, and that includes volunteers. So existing volunteers who want to know how volunteering with you will be different. So we have encouraged all volunteers to think about the three big issues, which is the number of contacts a volunteer will have each week, the duration of that volunteering position, and then the frequency of volunteering. So, for example, in our COVID-19 training, we ran into a lovely couple in their late 60s. They've been serving food to people experiencing homelessness. It's a wonderful volunteer position, but when we asked them how many people they met each week, they figured it was around 300 strangers each week. Now, if I ask you how many strangers you're comfortable meeting, you may have a number that's a lot less than 300. When we talk about volunteer positions, we're not just asking what the volunteer will do, but how many people they might come in contact with. So we've seen a huge surge for positions that are working in the environment and outside and in food security, but all of those positions have low contact activities. At some point, they will have to come in contact with a staff member, a volunteer coordinator, or another human being. So I'm encouraging you all to think about low contact volunteering and virtual volunteering, not just virtual as in absolutely no contact. These are some very traditional positions, and I thought we'd put them up just so that we can get on the same page when we have our discussion. We've seen a massive number of requests for what we would traditionally call go and gets. And this is where a volunteer is called into duty to pick up something. And of course, during COVID-19, we've seen a huge demand for volunteers and from volunteers to be a part of the go and get system. But there's a very clear delineation. The people who pick up things and the people who pick up people, there's a massive difference. So I do not have provincial statistics, we don't have those yet, but I do know at Volunteer Victoria, of the 281 volunteers we recruited, only 21 said they would put a stranger in their vehicle to drive them. When it actually came time to driving, only 4 out of 281 would drive. So that tells us that their intentions and their actions may be different. And as time changes, we need to be very aware of the impact, which is why we think writing good volunteer position descriptions now and providing real clarity will help you in the long run. So, of course, we are still seeing every board, all 28,000 boards for nonprofits in British Columbia are coming together and are working remotely. We're seeing skilled volunteers on projects, of course. But there is also a very traditional role for virtual volunteers, and that hasn't gone away. So we've seen large numbers of existing volunteers supporting reassurance programs, counseling, grief support, friendly visits. But in most cases, those volunteers have had a fair amount of training and onboarding because they're particularly sensitive positions. And then, of course, we've always had the very traditional website, social media, communication and marketing projects. So these are just some ideas of volunteer positions that exist currently remotely. And we didn't go very far and very deep to find many volunteer positions. What we have seen a shortage of, if I'm being completely honest, is a redesign of existing positions so that they sound safer. So many of the volunteer position descriptions that are still listed still sound like they were before March of this year. So there's some work I think that we probably need to do as a community to update everything. And as you ponder these virtual positions, we're encouraging you to go back and to look at your risk framework, but also to go back to good old-fashioned basics and revisit the Canadian Code for Volunteer Involvement and ask yourselves which positions can continue on, which positions are going to be adapted, but which positions are new that didn't exist before. And that is, you know, sort of very basic and obvious, but what we've learned in this time where we've been so busy focusing on the day-to-day management of COVID-19, that we had to take a really good, hard, honest look at which volunteer positions could continue in our organization. And because we're working with our Work Safe BC plan, we will be eliminating positions because they do not meet our safety protocols. And that is both disheartening and discouraging. So we have to think about how we will engage those existing volunteers in new activities. Remembering, of course, that every time we move a volunteer, we need to go back to basics of training and onboarding, security upgrades and skills assessments. So it's a huge volume of work. And as we have spoken right at the beginning, some of us are really Zoom comfortable, but we don't love it. Some of us love it and can't wait to do more, but each volunteer will have a different type of ability to volunteer using remote methods. So we need to go back and remember training. We need to go back and also remember that we cannot dismiss volunteers, and I mean that both in a do not care about them, but also we have a legal obligation to care for our volunteers. So we cannot create wrongful dismissal conditions. And one of the questions we've been asked more than any other question since March is, can volunteers over the age of 60 still volunteer? And the answer, of course, is yes, but the health and safety requirements must change. And we must put safety first. So within this volunteering model is also the question of how do we support volunteers who are not returning to their previous organizational positions in any role, and is there a new space for them in advocacy, in research, in rewriting, in policy frameworks, in focus groups. How do we find a place for everyone to belong? And I think this is the space where we all have to work together and share our materials and resources so that we're not all reinventing the wheel. So it's not the same as it once was. We have to go back and reconnect volunteers to our organizations and to our mission. I think one of the most important things in virtual volunteering remains human contact. So if you think about all the volunteers that have called, they could have gone online, but they chose to actually call you because they want to speak to another human being. So I think, again, reinforcing our organizational cultures, how we are staying connected in a virtual position description, not how we're working apart. So again, you will work remotely from home is never a great opening statement on a volunteer position description. You're working as part of a team safely. You will be working with a group of other people on a project that's going to last the next 12 weeks. It's all language we've used and we're all capable and competent at using, but we have to go back and revisit all of those position descriptions, including providing more contact information. One of the things that we've looked at also that's really important now is if volunteers are not coming in to your office, is how are you going to protect privacy, confidentiality, and establish safe boundaries? And this has been one of those areas where even in our own work at Volunteer Victoria, we figured all of our files were perfect at the end of March. And at the beginning of April, we discovered that we didn't have updated contact lists. We didn't have permission to share things outside of the office. And so we had to go back and create some new tools. And I'm sure some of you have been in this position. So we had to be explicit, first of all, if we're including volunteers, how much is it a safe in-person contact? Are you dropping off goods to that volunteer to work on? Or is it 100% virtual? Health and training policies, knowing how volunteers are going to be onboarded and trained and what their new level of training looks like. And that was really, really important. Again, sharing equipment, who is providing safety equipment and the training. And again, it's really easy if a volunteer is coming into your office, you'll say, well, we're providing it. But if a volunteer is volunteering in community in a low contact activity, who is going to be able to provide all of those tools? We also are recommending a new written policy and agreement form to make sure that everything is up to date and current, and that your volunteers are not only fully informed, but that they're also agreeing to follow your practices, which is super important. We have had some reports of volunteers breaking the rules, and it's mainly in environmental and gardening groups, and it's because they felt that they were outdoors and they were at low risk. So what the organization had written and what the volunteers were doing were two separate things. And again, we want to make sure that all volunteers are in the place where they're promoting the best health and safety rules. So that we can continue on with the same intensity of safety. Regardless of what happens in the fall with COVID-19, we know that volunteers are nervous about colds, flu, infections. We know that our large number of older volunteers are more nervous. So we really, really need to look at how they're coming on board. We also know, for those of you asking about youth programs, that youth are particularly sensitive at the moment about riding transit. So they are quite willing to meet with small groups of friends, but they're not as willing to travel. And the types of volunteering activities that we're asking them to do has changed significantly. One final thing about privacy and confidentiality. Again, what we discovered in our journey over the last 12 weeks is that many organizations didn't have permission to share information between volunteers and clients, because the gatekeeper was always the organization. We are now sharing information through virtual positions that we wouldn't have done if they were office-based. So I think it's a whole new world. And then finally for me, and I think there is so much focus on safety and security that we also have to focus on creating safe space. Finding a place where letting volunteers know that volunteering is different, but that there is still community and joy and happiness and meaning, and that all that they're doing is important. And so finding a place where we can provide tools, helping our volunteers understand that they can thrive in this new environment, regardless of how different it may feel, that we still have the tools and skills and ability to help each other along. And then, of course, there are some new excellent resources to support health and mental wellness on this journey. At the end of the day, volunteerism for each of us, I think, is about building community. And I think our role as volunteer managers has shifted, but what has not changed is that we are the link that connect community and people together, and that we are far more positioned to help people see a way forward in a positive, engaged, meaningful way. And it is so lovely to see each of you with all of your skills and abilities stepping forth at this difficult time to really build community. I'm going to stop here, and thank you so much for listening. I know that was a long sentence. I don't think I stopped to breathe then.
Oh, it's great, Lisa. I mean, you're setting the tone about basically what your organization is doing. I saw a lot of the questions, and you've answered some of the questions. I think we can move on to Oscar right now, just to give everyone a chance to speak, and then do the Q&As at the end of everyone's presentation. If that's okay, everyone. We just want to make sure everyone gets a chance to speak about some of their examples. So, Oscar, feel free to speak about volunteer Burnaby's experience. Oh, do you want me to unmute you? I could, oh, there he is. There you are.
Well, yes, all that and more, Lisa. I think we're living in a different time, in so difficult times these days. What I'm gonna go to now is what we have done at Volunteer Burnaby to respond to the needs of the community in these very difficult times. The first thing we did, we sat together with Vantage Point, and we designed something that will respond to the needs of organizations to post volunteer opportunities during the pandemic. And we added 2 tabs. When you post the volunteer opportunity, you select if it is a virtual opportunity or is it an in-person opportunity related to COVID-19 support. Because whether we want to go virtual all the time, it's not always possible. Sometimes some of the services need to be provided in person And what we need to do is what Lisa was saying, be careful with the way we onboard people. They need to be fully aware that their safety is first, that the safety of the clients is first, that everybody needs to be safe as we move through this. Um, the next is what we did at Volunteer Burnaby. Because if you go just to go volunteer, there is all kinds of volunteer opportunities in from 900 to 1500 at any given time. And many organizations, what they did is go and check COVID-19, even though the opportunities were not related to COVID-19. And many volunteers that were calling us at Volunteer Burnaby were looking to help with the pandemic, not with the opportunities that were there already. So if they click on I want to volunteer, they landed in this page, and then we made first forefront the volunteer opportunities related to the pandemic. They can still check govolunteer.ca or a database of member organizations to volunteer with them. But if they click on COVID-19 volunteer, they land in our Better Impact page. And the way we manage this page is that once they create a profile, or if they already have a profile, they get in and they see their own page, right? And in their own page, they click on opportunities, and it opens whatever opportunities are there available. I cannot show you everything that is available, but there is two that are on top here, and they're at home volunteering. One is the friendly caller, and the other one is um, magical seamstress. I'm gonna show you how this is being set up for the volunteers to access, and there is many other volunteer opportunities in the page. But just to show you what we've done, uh, when they hit magical seamstress, it shows them what the activity is all about, a description of what they will be doing, what qualifications are needed, and we say to respond to this posting, they must go externally to the organization that is offering the position. We don't allow them to track their hours in our Better Impact page because there is no point. They need to go to the organizations that are needing the volunteers. Uh, I need to tell you that this was done as a response to the city of Burnaby social planning department calling us to help engage volunteers for organizations that are providing COVID-19 relief and COVID-19 services or services through the pandemic. So when people click on the link or put the link on their browser, they go to where that position exactly is located, and they register with the organization that have posted that position, whether it be in Go Volunteer or in I Volunteer with the United Way or any other database. If your databases want to get into this, you're welcome to send me all the links, and I will post the opportunities for people, but they need to be for Burnaby and New Westminster because we want to keep this page local, and I encourage other volunteer centers to do the same. The purpose of this was just to have a place where they find volunteer opportunities quickly related to the pandemic and that are safe to do. And these are the categories that we created for the database in our Better Impact page. At home volunteering, because there's things you can do like the creating or seamstress, magical seamstress, sewing masks for foreign workers that are still coming to do their work and needing the protective equipment. Event volunteering, there is events like those rallies that have been planned, and we need to respond and educate people on how to get involved in a safe manner. Food security is with different food banks around the city that are still doing the work and delivering groceries to people who are isolated and need their food, and so on and so forth. in virtual volunteering, I'm going to give you an example of what we've done at Volunteer Burnaby with our volunteers in order to keep them engaged and participating in the community. We created a Volunteer Burnaby virtual series about 2 months ago. And this is where volunteers create content for a YouTube channel. And there is an opportunity to do performances, tutorials, different things. And I'll show you how that looks. It's posted in Go Volunteer, and that's where they register to submit their videos. And then goes to our volunteer page, our what do you call it, YouTube page. And there is different activities that are coming up. There is about 40 people creating content for this page, and the content that is being created is amazing. This is also being promoted by the municipal government, and I recommend that you keep in touch with your local governments and with the health departments so you keep on educating people in the safest way to get involved in their communities. I'm going to show you just one video of the videos we have in this, and hopefully it's not going to take too long to pop up. But that's the video of the city council and Mayor Hurley promoting volunteerism in the community. They have made it a, a really core part of their work to promote volunteerism in the community. Sorry for the delay, but it's gonna.
Staying home during COVID-19 doesn't mean you have to be alone. If you're feeling isolated or missing your old routine, Volunteer Burnaby has a great project to give you a lift.
Through their fantastic online videos, you can pick up a new skill, catch a performance, or try out a new recipe with the help of a local volunteer.
And if you're a Burnaby resident with the talent to share, this is a great opportunity to make a difference.
Whether you play an instrument, speak another language, or want to help others get fit, all you need to do is create a video.
Sharing your gift could brighten someone's day.
Supporting each other will help us get through this pandemic.
Our connections lift us up
And made us stronger.
Check out Volunteer Burnaby today. Working together, our community is better.
Sorry, we couldn't, a few of us, actually majority of us couldn't see the video. We heard the audio, unfortunately. We heard the audio, but not the video.
Well, excellent. Then you heard the audio. I think the audio is more important than the video itself.
Right. Maybe just provide the link. We could provide the link to everyone after, but I've watched it and I've seen a few of them actually. So maybe we can provide the link after.
Certainly. So that's what we're doing at Volunteer Burnaby, and is something that has created an opportunity for people to keep engaged. And in the database, there is opportunities to go and volunteer in person as a group, in person individually, especially for the food bank food sorts. And those opportunities are now changing so much that people need to be socially distancing when they do those opportunities. Driving for pick up prescriptions for seniors, people need to wear their masks, their gloves, and the pharmacy knows how to pack it in a way that is just dropped off at the door. They knock at the door as your regular delivery, and the drivers, the volunteer drivers, are still doing those fantastic jobs. Delivering food from the food bank delivery. There is no hubs, distribution hubs, because people would gather there and there is no social distancing in those gatherings. But we have volunteers going from the food bank to the door of the client to deliver the food where it's needed, and socially safe, socially distancing and keeping safe with gloves and masks and the whole thing. So I still believe that there is opportunity to do in-person volunteering as long as we manage those in the safest way possible. There you go. That's my part.
Great as usual, Oscar. But I encourage everyone to see the YouTube channel, which we'll send a link later. But I think there's, you said, over 40 videos, right, from volunteers in the community who sharing their talents, whatever it may be.
Yes, yeah, it is getting really robust.
Bigger than you thought. Thanks, Oscar. We'll move on to Diamond from Girl Guides of Canada, the BC Commissioner, and she's got some great ideas and some of the things that they've been doing from their perspective in regards to engaging their Girl Guides. So please welcome Diamond.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me. I'll just share my screen. I also have some construction going on outside my home, so hopefully that isn't suddenly too loud in the background here. Ta-da! So thank you so much for inviting me. I was so glad to be invited to participate and to speak from a slightly different perspective. We've heard so far from folks, of course, that provide volunteers to other organizations. We are an organization that's always looking for volunteers, and so it's been an interesting time for us in recent months, both delivering our existing programming and then considering what the future is going to look like amid COVID. So first of all, as was mentioned, I volunteer as our provincial commissioner. So I have the privilege of, in my free time, over lunch breaks such as this, leading our team of 18,000 girls and women in British Columbia who are actively part of Girl Guides. And among that membership is adult volunteers of all ages 19 plus, who power all of our programming. And our core programming that we offer is the in-person experiences. We are founded upon connections and access to role models and opportunities for girls to grow and discover face-to-face. And so COVID has been a very interesting opportunity for us to consider how we temporarily pivot what we're doing with respect to our programming and make sure that girls have access to everything that they want to explore. We have tried to encourage our members to remain connected to Girl Guides, to their communities throughout. We've launched some small challenges and opportunities, for example, on social media, for girls to win a virtual badge. This year is a virtual badge that girls can earn for being a friend to others in their community. So that can take a variety of forms, and I'll mention a few slides from now. But this has just been a small, totally free recognition opportunity for when we recognize people doing really special things, we can send them this virtual badge, no contact, no anything, just something fun that they can post to their own social media or share online or print or even print on fabric and have stitched on. Of course, not every organization is badge driven as we are, but this has been an awesome opportunity to connect girls and encourage them to keep volunteering, to be friends to others, and to keep their spirits up during this time. We started COVID, though, with a lot of challenges associated with the pandemic, namely a whole lot of cookies. We had 800,000 boxes or $4 million of cookies sitting here in British Columbia, and having a large volume of perishables in your possession is never a good situation, when normally our fabulous sales force, our own girl members, would be out and about selling throughout the spring. All of our programming is powered by the sale of cookies, the funds that are raised through the sale of cookies, and so to not be able to go door to door or sell outside of supermarkets, for example, posed a big challenge for us. Luckily, as a result of lots of discussions with retailers, media coverage, and the like, we had a lot of retail partners step up to support us creatively, which let us transition our focus from what do we do with all these cookies to what do we do with our fabulous programming. And thankfully, even you can purchase cookies online through London Drugs at this time. So we are privileged to some extent in that in the last few years, we've already pivoted our program in terms of how we make our resources available to online. So we introduced a program a few years ago called Girls First. And Girls First is intended to put girls in the driver's seat of their own experience in Girl Guides. Long gone are the days where an adult volunteer tells you, this is what's happening, this is the plan for the year, I hope you have fun. We're really trying to empower girls to be able to decide what topics they care about, how they want to explore them, and what they would like to focus on. And so we launched a virtual platform several years ago now, where all of our activities, like actual individual activities, like the steps to take to do a science experiment or the supplies you need for an art project, all of those have already existed online for us. And it's an evergreen resource that we're constantly keeping updated with new activities being added. That's a really great asset for us as well, because as new issues arise in our communities and in society, we're able to adapt our programming and add new activities all the time so it remains fresh. So whether that's activities on inclusion or whether that's activities on mental health, we can make sure that we're delivering the needs that girls have today. Now, having this virtual platform has also been a fabulous opportunity, because a few weeks into COVID, after the initial shock and the initial also what do we do with all these cookies, we were able to pivot to guiding at home. So our national office actually turned what you see here, which is our virtual platform where if you click within, there's a whole variety of activities. They turned it from a login based platform where you could only see material if you were a member of Girl Guides and you had an account, to a whole suite of resources available to any parent, any child in Canada, any user, because we wanted to make available all of our great learning resources for non-members as well, to be able to explore. Girls, anyone, we have such a wealth of knowledge within our organization that we wanted to share it in this way. So this has been a great resource for us to be able to make our self-serve program options available so people can do them on their own time. That's not necessarily volunteering in the same way, though many of the activities online do offer girls step-by-step guidance about how to launch a volunteer project of their own, but a whole variety of different topics. We also have had many, if not most, of our individual volunteers take on the task of organizing virtual group meetings. And this is just a little Zoom screenshot I pulled from online that one of our members posted of having a virtual paint night. So they've taken all of the in-person programming that they would normally do, and they found really amazing ways, often on their own, frankly, of their own initiative, with their own creativity, they've found ways to bring that online. We can hardly take credit for all of the innovation and ingenuity. A lot of our volunteers have been so brilliant with the efforts that they have put in. And so not every group has done that. So we've also wanted to make some general opportunities available so every girl has an equitable amount of access to special opportunities to stay connected. So for example, we partnered with external organizations like City News and News 1130. They recently did a COVID Questions from Kids episode with Dr. Bonnie Henry, and we were able to have Girl Guides ask questions of Bonnie Henry and learn more about the pandemic, and that was open to all to submit questions. We were also able to, and continue to be able to, partner with other volunteer-powered organizations in BC, like some of the ones you see featured here. We have the Sports Hall of Fame in the top left corner. That was just from last night. We have just next to that a beautiful baby bird from the Wildlife Rescue Association of BC. Down below, we have the H.R. Macmillan Space Center. We have their astronomer who led a great space session for us. And then we have the Vancouver Art Gallery who walked us through the life of Emily Carr. So all of these programs have been readily available online on Facebook Live, streamed through Zoom, and they've made our general programming accessible to all of our members on demand. They can watch it live or they can watch the recordings after the fact, as well as non-members. So siblings can tune in, friends can tune in, and we've had, I believe our most popular one yet has had about 3.8 thousand views, with a few hundred usually watching live. So we've been really thrilled with the success of that in partnership with so many great organizations. Some of you may be on tonight, I'm not sure, or sorry, right now at lunchtime. I did see a few familiar names in the attendance list. We also have had some of our volunteers tackle various heartwarming community-based projects. We're always happy to receive, for example, from organizations like all of yours, opportunities for our girls to volunteer. So special things that they can do. We had a lot of girls, for example, collect donations from their community to donate cookies to healthcare workers. That was a big thing in the last few months. Lots of hospitals receiving a large volume of cookies for their lunchrooms, and those folks enjoying a special treat. But we've had a whole variety of other projects. We've had some of our older girl members and some of our adult members making face masks, among many other different initiatives. And we look forward to many of those continuing. Just today, I got one offer from a volunteer organization for girls to make cards for seniors, for example. And those types of activities we're happy to accommodate and put out to our membership. Now, in terms of how we're empowering, engaging with, connecting with our volunteers in the weeks and months to come, we've shared this information with our own membership. We've let them know that more is coming. We will be working on online self-paced learning modules. So those self-paced learning modules are developed by our national office, by our training team there, that will offer adult volunteers a little bit more confidence in terms of how to facilitate program that they're so amazing at in person online in a way that's still engaging. We'll also be offering what are being described as Sandbox Sessions, so often led by a volunteer who's savvy with something like Zoom, for example, that lets other adult volunteers tune in and learn how to use the functionality of something like Zoom. So you can actually log in and practice different techniques. For example, see how breakout rooms work, see how to mute everyone, very important when you're dealing with a sea of young girls during an active activity, to be able to mute so you can hear whomever's speaking. All of those things are in development right now. We're also working on new prepackaged activity resources. So again, our core deliverable is girl experiences. And so we'll be offering a whole suite of resources that consider every possibility for the fall. Now, we actually do believe that we'll be able to return to in-person programming come the fall. That is what we're working towards right now in terms of our planning, but should that not be possible, we'll have prepackaged activity packages for in-person, virtual, correspondence-based program, for example, if we need to send things to girls in the mail, especially for girls who may not have regular virtual access. We also have started to do some virtual briefings and trainings for some of our key volunteers. This past Monday, we had a province-wide gathering of all of our key, coordinating volunteers, our commissioners from all across the province who lead teams in their respective neighborhoods. And we were able to bring those people together to just try to give them the latest on where some things are, while also readily acknowledging we do not have all the answers yet, but more information is coming their way soon. And of course, regular updates by email. We hope that with the power of our volunteers, this fall we'll be able to deliver in-person program again. But as mentioned, we'll be ready and able to deliver things in any format. That's due to both the Be Prepared spirit of Girl Guides, our motto, but also because we have such amazing volunteers who themselves have spectacular ideas about how to proceed. And we're really excited to get back to all things guiding, and in the not distant future, I hope all things camping. I have a little camp scene behind me, but any and everything that we're able to do and that girls want to do, we can't wait to get back to that. I just wanted to share my contact information as well as contact website for Girl Guides. Feel free to get in touch at any time if you have opportunities with your organizations, if you're curious about things that we're up to. We have a large and diverse membership of 18,000 girls and women here in BC in virtually every community in the province. We are always glad to connect to opportunities whenever we can, whenever they fit with what we're all about. And of course, I'd be remiss if I did not mention that our registration is open now for the fall. So if you have a girl in your life who's in kindergarten to grade 12, encourage her to register and be part of all the fun and friendship and adventure. And if you're an adult volunteer, consider volunteering with Girl Guides as well. You all know the power of volunteerism, so I have to get that plug in there whenever I can. So thanks for having me.
Thanks, Diamond. And I was speaking to her earlier about her backdrop with the Girl Guides campsites, and she's created them. I think you said you created them, but they're branded Girl Guides, and she had some other examples. But while we were talking about that, I thought that would be a great virtual project for, finding someone tech savvy to create Zoom, Zoom branded wallpaper that's branded to your organization. So Volunteer Victoria logo with beautiful backdrop with Volunteer Victoria or Burnaby. So I'm going to actually use that for my volunteer. We have a Canada Summer Job student starting, and I'm going to have them do a couple of wallpapers for us. So there's an example right there.
It's super easy. It's free. I use just a little online design app, but if you just Google something like Zoom background dimensions, it will tell you how big it needs to be.
So there you go. There's one project right there, everyone. And there you go for idea sharing. So I know we only have a few more minutes left because, time is precious for everyone. But I think, Carrie, we may have time for a couple of questions, specifically in regards to maybe COVID-related managing of volunteers policies. Carrie, if we have time to do that.
Okay. During Lisa's talk, a couple of questions did come up, and I'm hoping that she can help us answer them. So Lisa, do you have a link or any information about the wrongful dismissal of volunteers? And can we either have that now, or we can include it in your presentation?
We certainly can. A gentle reminder, volunteers cannot sue under employment law. They sue under human rights discrimination. So if you're shifting your volunteer program and you have an individual who faces who presents with an item that could be considered discriminatory, you need to offer that new volunteer position to every volunteer in your pool, or you need to set out criteria. The most important, and this is a top tip, always, always, always invite a volunteer to apply at another time. What you're doing is saying you are welcome, but you are not the fit for this volunteer position. That we're not rejecting you, we're accepting other volunteers. It's super important right now because we will have large numbers of volunteers who are a little bit nervous, scared, anxious. We would have older volunteers and volunteers facing health concerns, and those are massive areas for discrimination. So check with your human rights discrimination, but I can tell you that more than 60% of all directors and officers liability insurance claims were for the wrongful dismissal of staff and volunteers in Canada. So keep an eye out for that.
Interesting. Thank you very much. So one other question that came up were, are there any samples of what the written policies and agreements would look like moving forward, like the wording of putting COVID into existing policies and procedures?
We can certainly share some examples that we've seen. I do think, though, it's really, really important that all policies come with an authentic voice, right? Do not go onto the government website and pull out their legal language. No one's going to read it. Nobody's going to believe that it's from you, your organization, right? If it feels like your organization's authentic voice, if it's said with care, but there's a firmness to it, right? There is zero tolerance for breaking COVID-19 safety regulations. A simple statement like that will go a long way. I personally am not a lawyer. Whenever I read it, like once it gets past a couple of paragraphs, I forget what I was supposed to have done. So I'm a firm believer that simple is best, but it is important now that in order to gain the trust of every volunteer, I think it's really important to have clarity of intention and consequences for boundaries. That will help everybody feel safer regardless of where we are on our COVID-19 journey, I think.
Perfect, thank you.
I
guess, Laura-Lynn, we have
in regards to that, Gary.
Sure.
If I may say that with policies and procedures, when they're tabbed down, they feel like imposed. But when you dialogue with people, talk to your volunteers, talk to your coworkers, and everything comes out of dialogue, they say, this is our policies, rather than saying, oh, this is what they want me to do. This is what we have decided is the safest way to approach volunteerism in these pandemic conditions.
Awesome. Thank you, Oscar. And thank you, Lisa. We do have one more question for Diamond, and then I think we should probably wrap it up. So the Diamond, the question was, how did Girl Guides of Canada secure the privacy of existing members on their online platform upon opening it to the public?
So I didn't realize you were going to ask me aloud. I just typed a little answer, but in short, our activity portal, our Girls First platform, doesn't actually contain very much in the beginning membership information. It's a portal where you had access previously if you were a member, but it contained the suite of activity ideas available to you. The only level of personal information really contained within is a list of the names of the members of your own group available to the adults within that group. There was also some functionality where girls above age 13 could give a thumbs up, a thumbs down, or comment on different activities to give us feedback. I believe that functionality is just not available for the public version. And other than that, there's really not a lot to safeguard. There's no contact information in there. There's not any details that anyone could incorrectly or inappropriately access.
Great. Thank you very much. So, Laura Lynn, I know that some people have asked if they are going to be receiving the slides as well, and I'm hoping that we can do that. And maybe wrap up some of these questions that are in the chat, make sure that we've covered everything, and then send it all out. I have recorded everything, but recorded it to my computer. So hopefully we can figure out how we can post it to Facebook maybe.
Oh, we have some pros here, so we'll figure all that out. So yes, we have recorded the webinar for those who've asked, so that will be sent out as a resource. Have fun watching that on your own. We will, with the presenter's permission, we will provide the slides. We will compile the notes, the chat, and we'll compile some notes. And please share with some of your ideas for virtual volunteering, because it's just great to do some idea sharing here, and no point of duplicating effort, replicating things. So idea share for us, and we'll compile everything we can and put it on our website and send you all the link. But we appreciate everyone joining us on the call. It was a very good conversation, and we're all just learning. It's like many of us have done this job for a very long time. Some of us are green, but with the unknowns, we're making it work, and it sounds like we're all trying to make it work. So thank you very much, everyone, for your time. We appreciate it, and we'll do more of these as the time goes. But everyone, please stay safe and have a great summer. Thank you, everyone. Take care.